For our listeners out there, I have Brad Fereirra on the line today. Brad is the head men's tennis coach and tennis director at Weber State University in Ogden, Utah. Brad, can you tell our listeners about your background and experience in the tennis industry?
Yeah, so I grew up in South Africa playing tennis, and then I actually attended Weber State University in 1986-ish, so that tells you how old I am. But I graduated, played college tennis there for 4 years, graduated, and went and worked at the Ogden Athletic Club a couple of years, and then became the head pro. I was the head pro there, director of tennis there for 10 years, and then I just decided to build my own club. So I ended up building a club in North Salt Lake and owning and running my own club there. And then about 8 years ago, I started at Weber State University and doing Weber State and also still kind of running my own club and teaching some lessons there. So I think I've been involved in tennis teaching and clubs and everything for over 30 years now, at different capacities. But that's about it.
All right. I did a little research on my own, and one interesting fact I found out was that you have a brother that was a professional tennis player, I believe, highly ranked, and says you were his coach for a while.
Yeah,
Um,
so my brother Wayne was on the HP tour. He was played at 16 years, I think, and did very well for about 10 of those 16 years. He was in the top 10. Got to a ranking of about 6 in the world for quite a while. Played against the greats like Sampras and Agassi and Boris Becker and Stefan Edberg and even John McEnroe. So he was without a coach for a period of time and asked me to come and coach him. And so I ended up being on the tour for a little less than a year coaching him. But it's not always easy for you to listen to your brother. So at some point, kind of told me it was easier for him to listen to someone else and to try to listen to my crap all the time. So he moved on and got somebody else.
yeah. What's that like being on the road for so long out of the year?
Yeah, not easy. So I was married at the time, and so to be gone from your family or your wife for even 3 months stretch at a time is not easy. So it's not. I think it's not always what it's cracked up to be. It always looks like it'd be fun to sit in the stands and watch TV all day long, but it's a lot of sitting around, a lot of waiting around. That you this and then you sit around and wait until maybe an afternoon practice, and when he's playing a tournament, you uh, you have to wait for the match, and if the matches before go longer, then you just sit around and wait extra hour or two for the match before to get done, and then you go watch the match, and then after that he's got to go for uh, physio and then massages and then interviews, and so you're sitting around waiting for all that to be done. So it's a lot of sitting around and waiting. It's not terribly exciting to be honest.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a lot more fun actually to be coaching in a club where you can develop players. Be home every night, but develop players and teach people how to play from a ground. I much prefer taking. My ideal is to take a beginner and teach them how to play tennis rather than taking people that already know. I'd rather start fresh and teach them exactly the way to play than take someone that's played a while and try to change things.
What's the difference? I mean, when you're dealing with like beginner to intermediate players coaching from a pro, like what are the things you have to focus on when you're dealing with the pro versus, obviously someone more, beginner to intermediate?
Oh well, I mean, my brother, for example, is a supernatural athlete, so everything comes really easy to him. And of course, being number 6 in the world, he knew what he was doing. I mean, so when I go out there, it's not like I'm trying to look at say, well, your forehand's wrong, let's try this, or your backhand's not doing very well, let's do this. It's at the pro level, it's a lot of more mental stuff and making sure that mentally they're prepared, and maybe looking for little things here and there, which is not always easy, and then also more tactical stuff. At the beginner level, then it's very, very much technical. You're working predominantly on how to hit the ball correctly, how to hit the ball in more often, how to fix it so that it's easy and it's injury free, that kind of stuff. So it's completely different. I would say probably the one is more more teaching tennis, and the other one is more just coaching tennis. The teaching part of it is actually teaching them how to do it, and then the coaching part of it is when they have it down, and then you're coaching them on the specific matches.
Okay. So let's backtrack to the beginner to intermediate. What would you say are the top 2 to 3 biggest frustrations you hear from either beginner to intermediate tennis players or the parents you're dealing with them?
Oh, I would say one of the biggest frustrations is that tennis is a difficult game to learn. I think it's a lot more technical than some of the other sports. If you pick up, the biggest craze right now is pickleball, and people can pick up pickleball, jump on a court, and play, and it's easy to figure it out. People can be playing games and matches and everything right from the first time they pick it up, whereas tennis is a lot more difficult to do that. I think a lot of people have to spend a lot of time actually learning the game before they can really play matches or play competition. So tennis is a lot more time consuming. That would be number one. And then number two is when people do end up starting to play a lot of tennis, I think the whole idea of what do I do next is very frustrating for parents. So I hear a lot of times where parents will say, my kid really loves tennis, but I don't know how to get them into that. A lot of parents don't play tennis growing up or don't know the route or the way to take the pathway that the kids need to take. And so the frustration level is the kid wants to play tennis, but they don't know how to help the kid. Most parents are just really into trying to get their kids doing what the kid wants. If the kid says, I want to be good at it, the parents are happy to do whatever they can, but most of the time the parents don't know how to do that. So they have to reach out to the pros and figure it out. And even then the pros, I have a daughter that plays, I've been teaching tennis for 20 years, and she wanted to start playing tournaments and start gearing towards college. And I was shocked at how little I knew as a pro because I wasn't, in the circuit sort of thing. And so I think it's difficult. It's the kids, whether they play just high school tennis or whether they play uh, like just with their friends, or whether they go to lessons, whether they go to private lessons or group lessons. How many tournaments should they be playing? What tournaments they should be playing? It gets very confusing.
Okay. So really what you're saying is just picking up the technical skills to even be able to learn to play it, and then from there really piecing together all the factors that you need to come in with the training, like the lessons and maybe the group training and the tournaments, and kind of how do you blend all those things together?
Yeah, I think people want to know, if the kid says, I want to be good, then people want to know, well, how do I make him what he wants to do or she wants to do? If your kid says, I want to be a high school player, what's the pathway that I need to take to make him a good high school player? And then if a kid says, well, I want to be better than that, I want to be a tournament player, then what's the pathway? Or if they say, I want to go play college, then what's the pathway? Because each one of those is going to take a different degree of commitment, a different degree of what type of tournaments to play, what pathway to take. And I think most people just don't. I mean, I know for a fact most people don't know what they should do. They don't know what pathway how to get onto that pathway and which pathway they should take. It's a tough it's a tough thing to figure out.
What of these players and these parents that are coming to you, what's the highest percentage of what comes to you and says, here's my kid, I want them to do this? Is it the high school player? Is it the kid that just wants to be able to play with their friends? Like what would you say you see the most of in your experience?
Um, yeah, I mean it's a little different at the moment because I'm doing the college coaching. I'm not doing the club coaching anymore. But when I was in the club setting, Uh, y- I would say about 10% of the people were saying, yes, I want to go play college. And then I would say probably about 20 or 30% of them were saying that I would say actually a majority of the kids that were coming for lessons had a goal of making the high school team. And then only about 10 or so percentage of those, of those would be saying, yes, I want to go play college tennis. And then some were just there just to learn how to play, just as one other thing. I mean, in Utah, especially, I don't know how this is in a lot of other states, but the kids seem to do a lot of activities. Kids they want to learn how to play everything. So, some of the kids will come and play tennis, but they only want to play tennis once or twice a week because they also have soccer to go to and ballet to go to and gymnastics and all this other stuff that they're doing. So if you're going to be a college tennis player, it's going to take a commitment you almost have to specialize pretty early on and forget about doing all those other things. And so some parents, some kids don't want to do that. Some kids want to learn everything. Some kids want to learn tennis good enough that they can be on the high school team, and then there's some that are love tennis enough that it's a specialty and that's all they're going to do, and they want to go play college tennis. But I mean, the percentage probably about 10 or 15% are the ones that want to go towards college. Probably about 30% or so want to play high school tennis, and the rest just want to learn it.
Okay. So for the parents that have the kid that wants to go to college, what would be, I mean, I'm sure, I know every kid has different ability levels and there's a lot of different variables, but maybe just giving some general advice where you could help somebody get started, what would you say to them?
If you want to go the college route, I would say the earlier you start, the better. Number one. And the thing is, we have to realize is that with the colleges right now, there's so many foreign kids that if the American kids want to go play college, they need to be good. So it's not something that you can take casually. It's not something you can pick up and play once or twice a week and then think that you can go play college. So you've got to start early. You've got to be super committed. You've got to be playing a lot of tennis tournaments because the way we recruit on UTRs, Universal Tennis Ratings. And if your tennis rating is higher, you've got a better chance of getting into schools. So it's important it's important to play a lot of tournaments from an early age and get used to playing tournaments and start getting your UTR up, because that's the number one thing we're looking for in recruiting. We start with the UTR, and then from there we go to what type of a person the kid is, what their grades are. But the first level we have to start with is what's their tennis level, to make sure that they fit in and will be able to play on the team. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question correctly, but that's, it's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to take you starting early, and it's going to take making sure that you go to a coach to teach you the correct technique. Because if you're playing a lot of tennis with the wrong technique, it's not going to help. You've got to pick up the right technique and then work on that and make sure you perfect it.
Okay, so the UTR is kind of like the SAT or the ACT for the academic student. And I know you just touched a little bit on the technique. I know, there's a lot of kids out there that are taking these ACT preps and SAT preps. Like how would you structure the development? Like how much technique versus how much maybe group versus how much, match play versus like where do you what are your viewpoints on that?
Well, so there is statistics out there that say that it's easier to teach someone to do something correctly than to fix a habit. And so it's 3 times easier to do something correctly the first time than to actually change a habit. So as far as when you're starting out, I think it's very critical when you're starting out to get a pro that's very good on technique and learn the good technique early. The general idea is that you would spend between when you're starting in age 12 to get the technique down as best you can. And then age 14 and onwards, then you're trying to develop the game. So when you start in age 14, I said 12, but it's actually 14, you want to get your development, your technique down as best you can. So I would spend a lot of time on those earlier years with the coach, making sure you have the technique, but also doing group lessons. So a good fit would be at least 1 private a week, maybe 2 at least 2 in the earlier years, as well as putting some group lessons in so that you're playing with people at the same level as you and trying to figure out different bounces and balls. And then as you get older, then you start switching away from the technical and you start working towards more groups and actually playing a lot of matches. Because between age 14 and 18, when you go to college, then it's going to be more on tactical stuff, not the technical stuff. So like I said, beginner to age 14, very technical. Age 14 onwards, more tactical and playing a ton of matches. And then your UTR is going to be dependent upon what your UTR when you're 18, but you've got to get it up to that level. So I would start playing a lot of matches, age 12s, 14s onwards to start playing a lot of tennis matches and getting used to playing tennis matches. And the UTR will just sort of grow with you. As you're getting better, your UTR will get better.
Okay. You said a lot of these parents don't necessarily know how things work. What would be some guidelines in being able to do some due diligence on finding a coach that teaches the proper technique? Because I'm sure, just like anything else, there's a lot of different people doing it a lot of different ways, and if somebody doesn't know maybe what to
Yeah.
look for, what would be some advice that you would give to parents on to due diligence on that process, so that they're not having to go back 4 years later and cleaning up a bunch of bad
Yeah.
habits?
Yeah, that's a tough one. There are a lot of coaches out. The sad thing about tennis coaching at the moment is anybody can be a tennis coach. So if you pick up a hopper of balls and stand on a tennis court, and someone comes up and takes a lesson, you can call yourself a tennis pro. So I would look for somebody that has had a lot of experience. The most of the people I think that pick up good pros, I think, ask a lot of questions. So they will ask, if they see somebody hitting a ball really well in a tournament, they go, okay, now who's your coach? Do you like him? It's not, sometimes the coaches could be good, but just don't mesh personality-wise with a person. Sometimes the personalities mesh, and so then the kids love it a lot more. So it's really important to find a coach that your kid likes and that is teaching them the right stuff. There's a lot of, I mean, sad to say, I think there's a lot of coaches out there that are not teaching the right stuff. I've run across a lot of coaches that I don't think do any continuing education. They don't continue to learn new things. So they're teaching a lot of old habits. They're not keeping up on the new stuff. I think there's other coaches that are out there that are always researching, always looking for things. And it's tough to find them, but somehow you have to find them. The only way to do that is there's no rating system on coaches, so it's not like you can jump on a website and read up on who the coaches are and get a rating system on it. Unfortunately, there's nothing like that. So what you have to do is you basically have to just ask around a lot and find out who the better coaches are, and then see if you can get in with them. The other problem too, sometimes you could join a club, and the guy that is the best coach, he is so good that everybody's taking lessons from him. He's too busy to teach you, so you have to go to someone else. But I think you've got to do your research. You've got to find the right man. I think it's critical that you find the right coach to begin with your kids, and make sure you try to get in with them. But it's not an easy question to answer. Sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. What do you see are the biggest technical flaws out there that, if somebody's like, man, I really need to, maybe have this down versus that, or that versus this? Because I mean, I'm sure there's, you have so many hours in the day. What are the biggest technical flaws do you see out there in general?
Um, okay. So my personal view is that everything should be very natural. I think the kids should hit the ball naturally. So if I'm going to hit a forehand, so just like if I throw a ball, my hips are going to rotate, my shoulders are going to rotate, and I'm going to use what they call kinetic link. My movements are all going to link together, and it's all going to be a relaxed, easy linking movement. So what I'm looking for with players that when I'm taking the college players, I'm looking for college players that look very fluid, that look like they make it look easy. One of the biggest things is I think some coaches get in and they have a set program, like you have to step this way, you have to start with a racket this way, you have to finish a certain way, and it becomes very, very technical. I think it's a difficult game as it is, and then to take like a forehand, for example, and say these are the 6, 7 steps you have to take every single forehand, I think that just paralysis by analysis. It just overanalyzes everything and kills the kids' creativity. So I always look for pros that will take a kid and look and say, okay, this kid's missing a forehand and he's missing a long, so let's figure out how to get it in, rather than, okay, let's completely change the forehand. Because if you pick 50 kids and line them up, there's probably 50 different ways that they're hitting forehands. Not every single kid's going to be hitting the forehand exactly the same way. So to cookie cutter coaching, I don't think is the right way to go. I think you have to look at each kid individually and try to fix their game individually or help them with their game individually, rather than a cookie cutter approach to every single person. And I think there's a lot of coaches that are out there that are actually doing kind of cookie cutter approaches to everything, because I don't know if they really know how to creatively fix something, So I would definitely be looking for coaches that are in that category that will, not you look at the way the kids are playing and every single kid hits the ball exactly the same way. I mean, there's going to be some similarities, but I think you want to get somebody that works with kids, each individual kid, rather than just the same way every single time.
All right. Okay. The last question. What would you say are the biggest misconceptions some of the beginner intermediate players and parents have about tennis?
The biggest misconceptions is, I think that one of the biggest is just how good their kids really are. I mean, I think, I get kids will, you're stuck in Utah, for example, and the kids are winning every single tournament in Utah, and they think they're superstars because they're winning the stuff in Utah, and then they go out to the Intermountain region and they realize they're not actually that good, and then the Intermountain kids go to national tournaments, and then they go, wait a minute, I'm not even that good anymore, and then we go from international to international, where you now competing with the kids from all over the world, and then you really don't realize how good you are. So, I mean, that's the one misconception, is how good everybody thinks they are. And the problem, too, is if a kid's winning in Utah, then he seems to think that he doesn't really have to work hard because he's already winning everything. So I think people just need to step out and realize how good. I mean, there's so many different levels on tennis. You've got the kids in good in Utah, then they nothing compared to the Intermountain, then they nothing compared to the nation, then they're nothing compared to international, then even those internationals are nothing compared to how good the pros are. I mean, it's a grind. You've got to really put a lot of time and effort into to be decent. So I think, I get a lot of people say, yeah, my kid's really good. He played high school tennis. And I'm like, well, he's good for high school tennis, but he's not good for national tennis, right? And then I get kids that are playing national tournaments and say, my kid's super good for national tournaments. And, then I'm saying, yeah, he is good, but for international, he's not that good. That's the kind of the misconception. I think a lot is how good everybody thinks they really are, when they're not really as good as they think they are.
Yeah. Does that skew a lot of the parents, like their goal setting, thinking that, their kid might be going pro when there's really no chance that they're going pro, because they don't really know what the spectrum is. And so therefore do you think maybe they're setting their kids up sometimes for failure because that gap is so big between where they are and like where they think they're going to get to?
Definitely. Yes. I think that's exactly the case. There's a lot of kids from the college perspective that we speak to that say, I'm trying to recruit kids from the U.S. that I think would play 5 or 6 on my team, and then they're telling me, oh, there's no way, your team's not good enough. I want to go play for such and such a school, and then that school, they would fit in at number 10 or 11 on the team. Or there's other times where I recruit a kid that I think would probably play higher up on my lineup, and then they turn, and I mean, we're a Division I school, but we're not one of the better Division I schools. And then that kid turns around and says to me, oh, there's no way I'm playing college tennis. I'm going to go pro. And it's like, you guys I don't think people realize how difficult it is.
All right. Well, Brad, I really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, you're welcome. So any follow-up questions, just let me know.
Will do. Thank you so much.
Okay. Have a good one, Al.
Take care.